The rest of their schedule looks really, really manageable. If they can get past Wisconsin and they can just keep on doing their thing, defenses travel pretty well. I just don't see how. I don't see a loss on the remaining of the active schedule. What is going on, everyone? It is Jake with Master of Football, back at it again. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you who've never been here before, this is Jake with Master of Football. All things pro football, college football, video game football, anything related to American football, we discuss on this show. Please, 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 emphasis on the please. Please subscribe to the channel. Please like it. Please share it. Please comment on it. Anything like that drives engagement. I very much appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so we had ourselves a wacky weekend. I don't know, just different kind of certain things. Okay, the Raiders were, favored against the Bears, absolutely just choked in that game. But Boise State was favored to, or was projected to lose to BYU. There was a whole bunch of other things. Alabama lost. There's a whole bunch of interesting stories that happened over the weekend. I want to actually talk about the most interesting stories from the weekend, the most interesting stories up until now in terms of all of football, and then I want to talk about what I feel like is the most interesting story in particularly college football right now. So I've got my notebook here. So recap the weekend. Okay, Alabama lost. It's always big just because now it throws a huge wrench into the college football playoff situation. What happens if they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game? Do both of them go? What happens if Florida beats Georgia? And then Georgia runs the table for the rest of the way? They're the second place team in the SEC East. Do they still go to the national championship? There's lots of little different questions like that. Also, the Cardinals are 5-0. They are looking like, again, they had a rougher day against the San Francisco 49ers, but still 5-0. It is what it is. That's a huge story. Georgia's defense is really special, man. I'm looking here. Last year, they had 7 defenders drafted, meaning that they had 7 dudes who were playing last year who got drafted into the NFL who are not playing, and now their defense is giving up like 5 points a game. They're just ridiculous. They absolutely, positively, completely reloaded. I don't know how they did it, but they might have gotten better despite the fact they lost 7 dudes to the NFL draft. And then the other story I want to say from this weekend is, what the hell happened to the Chiefs defense, dude? The Chiefs, for the last couple of years have been pretty solid defense, but they are just bleeding yards right now, giving up 30 points to the Eagles, gave up 38 to the Bills, had a hard time moving the ball. They don't have as many of those deep shots as they're usually used to having, but then the defense, man, is just giving up, just getting gashed and gashed and gashed. I know their schedule's been really tough to start the season. They're 2-3. They're probably the best 2-3 football team of all time, though. So that's from this last weekend. I want to talk about, there's 3 stories I feel like are the biggest stories in all of football right now. One of them actually comes from the college ranks. The top story, and again, you can see it from the views on my channels, it's not even close, is Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. That's easily the biggest story. The NFL, I think, for the most part, has been playing pretty standard issue for the most part. I mean, there's teams have won, teams have lost. The Rams look good. The Rams lose. The Cardinals look good. I do believe, though, that is the biggest story so far, is the fact that is a tectonic shift from the strongest conference getting even stronger, from an Oklahoma adding to the team, adding to the conference, and then from a viewership perspective by adding Texas. No offense, Texas, but people watch you. You don't win. And then continuing on with that, the Cardinals going 5-0. Man, they're deadly, man. Kyler Murray is taking the NFL by storm. Everybody now is like, yo, can we get these short little quarterbacks that can run around all the place? They are freaking hard to stop. I would say that's the second biggest story, just because the first story, I mean, impacts it's tectonic plates for college football that makes the SEC even stronger than it already is. That in connection to the fact that the SEC was negotiating or talking about trying to be, yeah, we should maybe expand the playoff real quick just so they can get 5 teams in or 6 teams in or something like that. I feel like the biggest story in all of football right now, bar none. So I'm about to give the Master Football jinx. Basically, I'll show you what I did really quickly. Let's go into a couple of my previous videos. One of the previous videos I had was about the Seattle Seahawks. That was after their Week 1 win against the Indianapolis Colts. And I said, yo, man, did they get better? Turns out, no, they didn't. They beat the Colts, and then they lose to the Titans in overtime. They lose to the Vikings. They beat the Niners, and then they lose to the Rams. And now Russell Wilson is out for several weeks. He will probably not be able to be back they're hoping for the Packers game, but they've got at the Steelers in prime time. They've got the Saints in prime time, and then they have the Jaguars. And then after that, they have the Packers. So it does not get any easier. There's no breaks. Nobody cares about you in the NFL, but that's what's going on with the Seahawks after I kind of jinxed them. The next team I wanted to talk about was the Carolina Panthers. I was like, yo, dude, they got off to a 2-0 start. I'm like, yo, dude, they play the Texans on a short week, man. Are they going to get you 3-0? And they did. And what have they done since? So they beat the Jets, and then they beat the Saints, which is a good win. And then they beat they beat the Texans, which is all right. And then they lose to the Cowboys, and then they lose to the Eagles. Today lost to the Eagles. It was a really, really bad loss. They probably should have won that one. But again, so a team that started off 3-0 is now 3-2. So I'm going to do it again. I'm so sorry. Okay, but it's just the biggest story to me. The biggest story right now is the undefeated Iowa Hawkeyes. This last weekend, we had a 23-20 victory. The Iowa Hawkeyes, number 3 over the number 4 Penn State Nittany Lions. We come down here and check out the box score. Sean Clifford was actually knocked out of the game. They had to put a backup quarterback in the game. Petrus had 2 touchdowns, actually a really cool little like drag and then post by the tight end. They come out and they win that game 23-20, scoring 10 points in the fourth quarter. They were down 20-13. Came back, won that game. Huge win for the Iowa Hawkeyes. So the Iowa Hawkeyes have a rather particular brand of football. So I was able to run the numbers here on a couple of things that they have. So the Iowa Hawkeyes right now, offense 118th in terms of yards. Not a very good overall offense. However, they are 52nd in scoring, so they're rather efficient. I suspect, though, that it's probably college where they just overpower certain teams. Kicking returns for touchdowns, defensive touchdowns, fumble recover touchdowns. They score in many different ways. Their offense, yards-wise, maybe not super prolific. Their defense, okay? 8th overall in yards, 4th in scoring. They are absolutely dominant. They are super, super stingy. There's a lot of teams that want nothing to do with them. So you come here to the schedule. So you see that they start off the season. They beat the hell out of the Indiana Hoosiers. Indiana since has lost several games. They beat the Iowa State, who's lost another game as well. They beat Kent State. They beat Colorado State by 10, which wasn't a great victory. Beat Maryland, and then they beat Penn State. Now, the crazy thing is, if you come down here and check out the remainder of their schedule, it really lines up nicely for them. So this next week, they go Purdue at home, and then they go at Wisconsin. We're going to go over that game. That game is probably one of the most troubling ones they have left. And then they have at Northwestern, probably not a big issue of a game. Minnesota at home, just lost to Bowling Green, probably not a hard game. They have Illinois, who's having a ton of trouble after their week 1 win against Nebraska. And then Nebraska, whose offense has figured it out, but they just can't quite finish games. So we see here, they got the Purdue. Like I said, they play Purdue first, and they've lost to Minnesota. They lost to Notre Dame. They beat Connecticut. Good for you. But then they have a couple other games to keep going down. So like I said, they are currently at 3-2. Wisconsin is going to be a tough game. Okay, it's at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's defense is super, super stingy. Okay, but again, they lost to Penn State. They lost to Notre Dame. They lost to Michigan. And they beat the bad teams, but they lose to the good teams. So they've got Army and things like that. This right here is going to be a gigantic game against them. No disrespect to Northwestern right now. They're having a rough go. They've lost to, they got the crap kicked out of them by Nebraska. They lost to Duke. They lost to Michigan State. They beat Indiana State. And they beat Ohio. But I'm thinking I'm going to pick Iowa in that game. We have Minnesota down here. Minnesota gave Ohio State all it can handle and more in that first week. And then they had this mysterious loss to Bowling Green recently. They beat Purdue this last week by a touchdown. But again, I'm not seeing them be that super dominant team we thought they were going to be. Illinois is having trouble. Okay, they had a week 1 win against Nebraska, and then they lose to UT San Antonio, Virginia, Maryland, Purdue. They beat Charlotte, and then they lose to Wisconsin. So I don't know if this is the year for Illinois to beat Iowa. I'm picking Iowa in that one. This is a trap game for Iowa right here, okay? This at Nebraska, this the very last game of the season, okay? At Illinois, they lost that game, and then they came out and they had a good game against Fordham, good game against Buffalo, had a close loss to Oklahoma, they had a close loss to Michigan State, they beat Northwestern, they had a close loss to Michigan, so maybe Iowa just beats them closely, something like that. I want to surely apologize to all the Iowa Hawkeye fans out there that if I jinx you, okay? But it's just, that's a big story, okay? Right now, I mean, the rest of their schedule looks really, really manageable. If they can get past Wisconsin and they can just keep on doing their thing, defenses travel pretty well. And I just don't see I don't see a loss on the remaining of the active schedule. We'll see what happens in the championship. The Big Ten East champion is going to be deadly. Okay, they came through that really, really brutal schedule. So we'll see what they have to play there. But I know Iowa, they can play defense. They're efficient with their scoring. They're going to give every single team they play problems the rest of the season. So what do I need to know? Is this that one year when Iowa was really, really good and they played Stanford and got the crap kicked out of them? What do we think is going to happen with Iowa? Okay, get in those comments. Let me know, and then we'll start breaking it down. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Please like, share, subscribe to the channel. comment, anything like that. I really appreciate it. I am gassed. Okay, got to recover from my Raiders loss, but relish my Boise State win. But I will see you guys tomorrow for Raider Tuesday. I'm out.